kind of a fun episode planned for today. We always talk about drivers switching teams during silly season, but we rarely talk about how good each of the cars themselves are, so I want to rank that today. And then we also have some big news from yesterday, a couple breaking news stories from yesterday that I'll talk about a little bit as well. How's it going, everybody? My name is Eric, and welcome once again to Out of the Groove. And yeah, as the title suggests, in today's episode, I'm going to be ranking the top rides in NASCAR, as far as the top cars, the top teams. Not looking at the drivers so much, we're looking at the cars themselves. We like to rank the best drivers of all time, but we always kind of forget that a lot of the best drivers in NASCAR also were fortunate enough to drive some of the best cars and work with some of the best crew chiefs. So I want to look at the cars and the crew chiefs, the people behind the scenes more today in today's episode, and I want to rank, and I'm going to give you guys my top 20 cars, my top 20 rides in the NASCAR Cup Series today. But before we get into that, I want to quickly go over some reports that came out yesterday around the NASCAR world. First, sort of silly season related, AJ Allmendinger yesterday revealed that he is going to be working for NBC Sports next year. Part of their broadcast team for IMSA races, actually, but he's also going to be a part of NASCAR America during the week. But it sounds like now AJ Allmendinger's, his NASCAR driving career has kind of faded away. He is now stepping into the broadcast booth for next year. This comes just a few days after Jamie McMurray revealed that he's going to be joining the Fox broadcast team for NASCAR. So now we've got a new Fox edition and now a new NBC edition as well. The NASCAR broadcast booths and teams are going to be stacked for next year. AJ Allmendinger lost his ride earlier in this silly season to Ryan Preece. Been speculation as to whether or not he was even going to be back in the Cup Series next year. Most people thought it wasn't likely. I didn't think he was going to get a ride anywhere. And sure enough, it looks like his NASCAR days are basically numbered, but he's still going to be sticking around in the TV booth. AJ Allmendinger, we've heard him, in the booth for some Xfinity races before. We've seen him on NASCAR America before. I think he's going to be a great addition to that whole network, that whole broadcast team. I think he's going to be great. He's not done racing entirely, though. He is going to be part of a team for the Rolex 24 at Daytona. So if you're an Allmendinger fan, you'll still see a little bit of the dinger before too long. Another big bit of news that came out yesterday. NASCAR looks like is set to return to Nashville within the coming few years. Speedway Motorsports has struck a deal with Fairgrounds Speedway at Nashville, a historic track, to presumably bring NASCAR racing back there in the next few years. In the report, it stated that they're currently looking at running Xfinity and truck races there at some point in the near future. No exact dates, no exact sort of terms have really been released. It's all still kind of speculation, but this deal has lined up the possibility for NASCAR to return to Nashville. A historic track, a track that is over 100 years old, is nearly torn down not that long ago, is now being rebuilt, kind of the whole area is being redeveloped, so it seems like that whole city, that whole community is starting to really support the Speedway once again, support that whole area, and it looks now very likely that we will have NASCAR racing returning to the short track in Nashville sooner rather than later. Not a lot else to read into that there. All I can say is that, once again, NASCAR is showing that they are listening to the fan base. Fans for the last year plus have been begging for more short tracks. The short track there at Nashville Fairgrounds is perfect. It will be a perfect addition once they've fixed up, once they're able to get that set up for future NASCAR races. Shows that NASCAR is listening to the fans. That's all I got there. Now I want to get into the fun part of the show. I'm going to be ranking the top 20 rides in the NASCAR Cup Series going into 2019. Now, I couldn't decide if I wanted to start at number 20 and work my way up to number 1, which is kind of how I feel like I would usually do this list. But I think for this case, I'm going to start with the best ride in NASCAR right now, and I'm going to go down to number 20. And now these top 20 rides, the reason I'm doing the top 20 is mainly because these are the 20 cars that I actually think are capable of winning races, not on a weekly basis, but like going to the track each week. I realistically think that at most racetracks, this car could win. And also remember that I'm not factoring in drivers so much here. I'm mostly talking about crew chiefs, the teams themselves, the resources they have, the partners that back them. I'm looking at the cars themselves. So I hope I made that clear. Without further ado, let's get into the list. Number 1, the best car, the best ride in NASCAR going into 2019 is the number 18 car at Joe Gibbs Racing. That is a no-brainer to me. Adam Stevens has been with that team now for 3 years, and he's won 17 races when paired up with Kyle Busch. 17 wins in 3 years for that team is remarkable. They're always a threat to win the championship. They've been in the Final Four. That's without a doubt the best team in NASCAR. If you're a driver, if you're just any driver, the 18 car would be the perfect bet. You're full sponsorship as well. It's perfect over there. Second best ride in NASCAR going into next year is the Stewart-Haas Racing number 4 car. Kevin Harvick's a great driver, don't get me wrong, but Rodney Childress is one of the best, if not the best, crew chiefs in the garage area. Ever since that team really started 5 years ago, they've won 24 races. Rodney Childress has been the crew chief the whole time, and think about how he turned Kevin Harvick's career around. Coming through the ranks for the first 10, 12 years of his career, Kevin Harvick was a good driver at RCR. Good driver, made the playoffs pretty much every year, was sometimes a threat to win the championship, but the first year he teamed up with Rodney Childress and Stewart-Haas Racing, he won the whole thing. That car has won 24 races the last 5 years. Rodney Childress and Stewart-Haas Racing are a big reason for that. That's the second best car in NASCAR. Number 3, this one might be arguable, but I'm going to give it to Team Penske's number 2 car. Not the 22, not the car that just won the championship. I'm going to go with that 2 car that's sponsored by Miller Lite, Discount Tire, and more importantly though, it's crew chief by Paul Wolfe. Paul Wolfe and Brad Keselowski have been teamed up on that car for 7 years now, and during those 7 years, they've won 23 races. Now, Brad Keselowski's a large part of that. I think Keselowski is, in my opinion, he's the best driver at Penske, but I think Paul Wolfe, he's a veteran crew chief. Going into 2019, you want a veteran crew chief who's won a championship before, who's got, that team's got full funding, full sponsorship. 23 wins in 7 years. Crew chief driver pairings don't last for 7 years very often, so that must mean that Paul Wolfe is a pretty talented guy in the garage area. I think that car is the 3rd best in NASCAR. Now, close behind them in 4th, I'm going to give it to the 22 car from Penske. I mean, obviously, they just won the championship. Todd Gordon's been, he's been there years now. He's also been teamed up with Logano for a long time now. 19 wins in the last 6 years for that 22 car. They're usually consistent, but remember, 2017, they missed the playoffs entirely, and then they bounced back this year to win the championship, so it makes me think they're a little inconsistent sometimes. That's why I have them behind Brad Keselowski's 2 team. But yeah, Penske's got 2 of the top 4 teams in NASCAR right now, in my opinion. At number 5, I'm going to put my first Chevy team in here, the Hendrick Motorsports number 9 car. Alan Gustafson is a veteran, experienced crew chief. He's won plenty of races with different drivers before. He's worked with Jeff Gordon, now he's working with Chase Elliott, and more importantly, the 3 years Chase Elliott has been there, they've improved every single year. And they're coming off a 3-win season, another deep playoff run. It looked like Chevy was starting to get a hold of the Camaro, so I think that 9 car has got to be the best Chevy car out there right now. At number 6, I'm going to put the Joe Gibbs Racing number 19 car. Simply put, the last 2 years, that team has been working with a young, inexperienced crew chief with Scott Graves, no offense to him, but they're bringing in Cole Pern now to crew chief the 19 car. He's won a championship with Furniture Row. I think he's going to turn that team around. He's going to make that team as great as they were during the Carl Edwards years. I think the 19 car is going to be the 6th best car in NASCAR right now. Number 7, I'm putting the Stewart-Haas Racing number 14 car. Similarly to how Rodney Childress really helped vault Harvick's career into superstardom, Mike Bugaravich, I think that's how you say his name, has kind of done the same for Clint Boyer. They had 2 wins last year. Honestly, I'd put them ahead of the 19 car, except for the fact that they are driving a Ford, and I think it's important to remember that all of the Fords next year are switching to Mustang. And we saw how last year when Chevy changed to the Camaro, it took them a while to get used to it. That's the only reason I have some of these Gibbs cars, especially ahead of some of these Fords, because I said all this, the last couple months, Stewart-Haas Racing was the best team in NASCAR last year, but with them switching to Ford, or switching to the Mustang, I'm worried that it's going to take them a couple months to get used to it, like we saw what happened to Chevy. So that's why I have them behind somebody. That's why I have the 19 car up so high and why I have the 9 car up there as well. But the 14 is still going to be good. It's the 2nd best Stewart-Haas Racing car, I think. At number 8, I'm putting the Stewart-Haas Racing number 41. Billy Scott's a pretty young crew chief, but they did get a win last year, made it to the round of 8 in that car, and I think Kurt Busch definitely made that car look better than it was, and since it seems likely Daniel Suarez, who hasn't had a whole lot of success in his career, is going to be driving that car, I'm not saying that's going to be the 8th best team next year, but I think the car itself is the 8th best car. I think Suarez maybe drags it down a little bit, whereas I think Kurt Busch elevated it slightly last year. I don't know, this is a tough one to place, but I'm going to put it at number 8. There's a lot of moving parts, and I don't know if Billy Scott really is the best crew chief there right now. It's not even confirmed if Billy Scott's going to be the crew chief next year. I'm just assuming because he was this last year. At number 9, I'm going to put the final Penske team, the 12 car. It's the newest addition to the Penske team. Jeremy Bullins has the least experience of any of their crew chiefs, so it's definitely the 3rd best Penske car right now. But I still think it's a top 10 team. And Jeremy Bullins has worked with Blaney for a while now, and that team does have full sponsorship. They got a lot of good partners over there, so that team's got the funding, they've got the Penske support, so got to put them in the top 10. At number 10, I'm going to put another Joe Gibbs Racing car. This one's going to be the number 20. I don't think this team is as good as it was during the Matt Kenseth era. I think Jason Ratcliffe, in my opinion, was a better crew chief than Chris Gale, but Chris Gale is now entering his 3rd year, all of them with Eric Jones, and I think he's starting to show some improvement. We saw flashes last year of how good that 20 car can be, and I think they're only going to get better this year. I mean, last year technically was Chris Gale's first year as the crew chief of the 20 car specifically, and they managed to get a win and made the playoffs, and that's pretty good. So I think they're 10th. At number 11, I'm putting the final Stewart-Haas Racing car, the number 10. Stewart-Haas Racing was the best team in the garage last year. I think by switching to Mustang, it might slow them down a little bit at first. 10 team was the worst team at Stewart-Haas last year. I think they'll still be the worst team there this year. Still not bad. Still 11th overall, I'd say. And they got full funding from Smithfield, so I think that team's still okay. It's still a pretty popular ride, I'm sure. At number 12, I'm only just now getting to my 2nd Chevy on the list. At number 12, I'm going to put the Hendrick Motorsports number 88 car. I think Alex Bowman's a good driver, but he was a pretty young and experienced driver, and he managed to make it to the round of 12 last year in the playoffs. That team completely overachieved last year. I don't love Greg Ives as a crew chief. He hasn't won a race since 2015. But like I said, they completely overachieved last year with a relatively inexperienced driver at the wheel. Not saying Alex Bowman's bad. In fact, maybe Alex Bowman's one of the greatest drivers ever, and we're just now realizing it. But the fact that 88 car managed to run as well as it did last year, I think says a lot about the team working on the car. At number 13, I'm going to put my final Joe Gibbs Racing car, the 11. And this one's really surprising to me because they have full funding from FedEx, one sponsor across the board. But last year was like the worst season I've seen from that 11 car in a long time. And to make things even more unpredictable for next year, they've switched crew chiefs. We don't know who's crew chief in that 11 car yet. They have not announced who the crew chief of the 11 will be, but they're sent Mike Wheeler elsewhere. Since we don't even know who the crew chief is going to be next year, I just think they're the worst. That's the worst car at Joe Gibbs Racing right now, which still isn't a bad thing. Still, Joe Gibbs Racing is really good. But right now, there's a lot of uncertainty around that 11 team. I can't rank it any higher than this. At number 14, I'm finally going to put a Chip Ganassi car on here. I think the 42 car is at number 14. Kyle Larson makes this team look a lot better than it is. Larson consistently makes this team look like a top 10 team when in reality they're a 14th or 15th place team. I do think in 2019, and now this is where I'm going to factor drivers in a little bit, because Chip Ganassi is moving Kurt Busch to that one car, they're going to have two really good drivers in their stable, Kurt Busch and Kyle Larson. I think that's going to improve the overall, progress of the program. I think Kurt Busch going to that one car is going to help all of Chip Ganassi as a program, so that's why I have this team as high as 14th. In reality, I think the last couple of years, the 42 car has probably been like the 16th best team. At number 15, I'm going to put a Hendrick Motorsports car, but maybe not the one you're thinking of. I'm going to put the 24 car. Simply put, Chad Knaus is going to be the crew chief of that car. He's a 7-time champion. I know last year wasn't great. I know the year before that wasn't great. But Chad Knaus is still got to be one of the smartest guys in the garage area. I think he's going to make that team great. 15th. At 16th, I'm going to put a Richard Childress Racing car. I think the 3 car is going to be the 16th best team in NASCAR next year. And largely, I think it's because that 3 car is now the leader of that team. Newman's gone. They put a rookie in that other car. So Austin Dillon and that 3 team are the leaders of RCR. Richard Childress, if he wasn't already, is going to be putting his best stuff into that 3 car. And they finished this last year pretty strong. I think next year the 3 car is actually going to be a playoff contending team, not just a team that gets lucky and wins a race and makes it in. I think they're actually going to be a team that contends on points. And I think largely that's because they are now the leaders of that team. At number 17, the 17th best car in NASCAR, you guessed it, the 48. I know he's way down here, and remember, I'm not talking about the driver. I think Jimmy Johnson will make this car look better than it is next year. But the crew chief on this 48 now is Kevin Meandering. And last year, I know he's a young crew chief. He doesn't have a lot of experience, but last year with William Byron, he finished 23rd in points. I get that the 48, has full funding next year, full sponsorship for the entire season, but Kevin Meandering proved last year that he's got a lot to learn before he can really be a contending crew chief in NASCAR. And I think I'm honestly being generous putting this team at 17th. I think Jimmy Johnson's going to make a 20th place car look like a 12th place car next year, and that says a lot because Jimmy Johnson's one of the greatest of all time. I just don't think Kevin Meandering and that team's going to do him any favors. At 18th, I'm going to put the other Chip Ganassi car, the 1 car. And like I said earlier about Larson, I'm going to cheat here a little bit and talk about drivers. Kurt Busch, adding him to that Chip Ganassi team with Kyle Larson, I think is going to elevate the whole team. Matt McCall is going to still be there, presumably, as the crew chief of that 1 car, and he's got some experience. He's been around a little while. I think the 1 car is better. They'll be a playoff contender next year, whereas this last year they really weren't. At number 19, I'm going to put a Roush Fenway team, the 17 car. 2 years ago, this team won 2 races, and Roush Fenway Racing has consistently had great super speedway cars. Brian Patty is the crew chief of that 17 car. He almost won a championship with Clint Boyer a while back, so it's not like he's a slouch. And they are switching to the Mustang. Maybe Roush figures out the Mustang. They really can't get any worse. And now we finally made it to the 20th and final car on my list here, the 20th best car in NASCAR, the only other car I really think that has a chance of contending for wins on a fairly regular basis. I'm going to put the Levine Family Racing number 95 car. You guys might be saying, what? With a 95? Levine Family Racing? Who even are they? In case you haven't heard the announcements from the last several months, Levine Family Racing is now a Joe Gibbs Racing aligned satellite team. They're switching to Toyota next year. They're going to get their engines from TRD, and much like Furniture Row Racing was the last few years, they will be aligned with Toyota's top NASCAR team, one of the top teams in all of NASCAR in general. So that alone has me optimistic for the performance of this 95 car. They're still a young team. They didn't have much success last year, so they're not going to immediately turn into like the 78 car overnight. But I think this is going to be the first year in what could be a several year long process that does see this team become a championship contender. Just switching to Toyota and getting aligned with JGR is exciting enough to me, but to make things even more exciting, they've added Mike Wheeler, who's coming over from the 11 car, a veteran crew chief who's won races with Joe Gibbs Racing in that 11 on that 11 team. He's going to be the crew chief of the 95 next year. So a veteran crew chief with a team that has rejuvenated supplies, better equipment than ever before. I think they're the 20th best team in NASCAR, and I think with Matt DiBenedetto as the driver, they can make an outside run at the playoffs. There you have it. That's my top 20. A couple snubs in there. I almost put the 6 car. We saw at the end of last season that 6 car maybe isn't as bad as we thought it was. Veteran driver can make it look good. The 43 I don't have on here. And the JTG car is not on here. Front Row Motorsports car is not on here. I gave you my top 20. Let me know what you guys think. Do you agree, disagree? Remember, I'm ranking the cars. Crew chiefs, teams, funding, cars themselves. I'm not talking about the drivers here, but I just thought that would be fun to talk about. Nobody really talks about the cars like this. Hope you guys enjoyed that little ranking. Like I said, let me know down below or on social media. Check out my Twitter, Instagram. You can let me know if you agree, disagree. Give me your rankings. I'd love to hear them. But anyway, you guys, thank you for watching this episode. I really appreciate it. And of course, thank you to our Patreon supporters. Michael Harrison at GWizofTheStars, SelfishGifts.com, Mentally Defective, Cameron James Tysmore, and the rest of these amazing supporters. Thank you all so much for the support every week, or every month really. Really helps me out a ton. I really appreciate it. And of course, you got P.O. Box down there in the description if you want to send me cool NASCAR stuff. I shouted a bunch of people out in a video just earlier this week that sent me cool things in the mail, so if you want to send me something as well, take advantage of that P.O. Box address down below. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys again probably later this week, probably sooner rather than later. Thanks everyone for watching. Really appreciate it. See you guys soon.